Picture this. You're standing in a desolate wasteland, right in the absolute heart of the blistering Far Desert. It's the middle of the night, the wind is howling through these crumbling stone walls, and you are entirely alone in a village where literally no human being has lived for 2 centuries. Welcome to our explainer for today, where we're going to unravel the chilling legend and the truly fascinating reality of Kuldhara, India's infamous ghost village.
So let's dive right in. How does a highly prosperous community of 80,000 people just vanish overnight without a single trace? I mean, according to the terrifying local legend, back in the year 1825, thousands of residents from Kuldhara and its surrounding settlements supposedly disappeared into thin air. It's like someone just flipped a switch, leaving the entire village completely desolate for the next 200 years.
And honestly, it's that exact legend that fuels Kuldhara's seriously eerie reputation today. Tourists and locals share some truly chilling folklore about what happens in Kuldhara after dark. You hear stories about the phantom jingle of women's jewelry, the sound of ancient flour mills just grinding away, and even screams echoing down the empty streets. People claim to see terrifying sights. We're talking headless apparitions wandering the desert. Some visitors even swear up and down that they can smell the unmistakable scent of cooking food drifting through the totally barren, uninhabited air. But, these aren't just local whispers. The Indian Paranormal Society actually went in to investigate Kuldhara, and they reported some deeply unsettling findings. We're talking about sudden dramatic temperature drops, down to -2 degrees Celsius in the middle of a literal desert. They documented unexplained spikes in electromagnetic fields and motion sensors triggering in pure silence. But get this, perhaps the most chilling detail of all, fresh handprints of a small child suddenly appearing on the dusty hoods of their parked cars, in a completely uninhabited wasteland where absolutely no children live.
Section 1. The Desert Miracle. The Ingenuity of the Paliwal Brahmins.
Long before it was some haunted ruin, Kuldhara was actually conquered by the Paliwal Brahmins way back in the 13th century. So how did they survive in a landscape of endless sand dunes where temperatures regularly soar to 50 degrees Celsius? Well, the secret was their absolute genius, the Kadeen water harvesting system. First, they expertly used the natural hill slopes to collect extremely rare monsoon rainwater. Next, they allowed this water to slowly seep into the ground over several months, which totally prevented evaporation. Finally, by winter, the land became so nutrient-rich and moist that they could actually grow 2 crops a year. Think about the sheer magnitude of that. It's kind of like successfully farming rice in the middle of the Sahara Desert.
Because of this masterful engineering over water, combined with their deep expertise in regional trade and banking, Kuldhara didn't just scrape by, it flourished. In fact, Kuldhara actually became significantly wealthier than the nearby royal city of Jaisalmer itself. They built these magnificent homes and temples in a place where literally nothing should have been able to grow. But as we'll see, amassing more wealth than the local royalty ultimately painted a massive target on their backs.
Section 2. The Tyrant's Ultimatum. Diwan Salim Singh.
Now, to really understand the threat they faced, we have to look at Diwan Salim Singh. He was the immensely powerful Prime Minister of Jaisalmer in the early 1800s. Driven by the deep childhood trauma of actually witnessing his own father's assassination by royal officials, he grew into a ruthless tyrant. To wrap your head around the sheer scale of his extortion, consider this staggering number: 20 million rupees. Through brutal, oppressive taxation policies, he completely crushed local farmers and merchants to amass a personal fortune of 20 million rupees. That is a virtually incomprehensible sum in the early 19th century. He built a towering mansion and held so much wealth and influence that the actual king of Jaisalmer was basically reduced to a mere puppet in his hands.
So, according to the enduring myth, his greedy eyes eventually fell on Kuldhara, and specifically on the village chief's beautiful daughter. He delivered a chilling ultimatum: hand over the daughter in 1 day for him to marry or face complete annihilation. Since the villagers didn't exactly have an army to fight him, the legend says it was this exact threat that prompted the miraculous, perfectly coordinated overnight exodus of all 80,000 people from Kuldhara and its 83 surrounding villages, all just to protect her honor.
Section 3. The Historical Truth. Dismantling the Myth. Okay, here is the massive twist. While Diwan Salim Singh was a real, historically documented tyrant, the famous story of the village chief's daughter, it has zero historical proof. No book, no document, no royal decree ever mentions it. It's pure, fabricated folklore.
So if the daughter is a myth, what actually caused them to leave? Well, in 2017, a scientific journal proposed an earthquake theory, suggesting the houses were destroyed and residents suddenly buried by a massive tremor. But that theory completely falls apart under scrutiny. Remaining walls in Kuldhara are still perfectly aligned today. True devastating earthquakes leave distinct structural damage and wide gaps that are completely missing here. Plus, historical and geological records show absolutely no earthquake occurred anywhere near the year 1825.
Right, let's dive into the harsh, documented reality of why this incredible civilization actually fell. The collapse of Kuldhara was really a perfect storm of three very real disasters. First, a devastating environmental crisis. The nearby Kak River simply dried up, severely diminishing the groundwater and completely devastating their ingenious cotton agricultural system. Second, while battling that drought, they were crushed by the oppressive, unlivable taxation demanded by Salim Singh. And third, lacking security, they were subjected to rampant raids and kidnappings by violent desert dacoits.
And hey, you don't just have to take my word for it. Just look at the official historical documentation from British officer Colonel James Todd, recorded in his 1829 book. He observed firsthand that the Paliwal Brahmins were living in voluntary exile. Why? Simply to escape Salim Singh, who was systematically stealing their hard-earned wealth and taking their families hostage for ransom. So it wasn't some supernatural vanishing act to protect a young woman. It was a desperate, entirely logical escape from tyranny and environmental collapse.
The absolute definitive blow to the overnight vanishing myth is right here in the population data. At its peak in the 15th century, the population was 1,588. But by 1815, which is a full 10 years before the supposed overnight disappearance in 1825, the population had already halved to 800 people due to the drying river. And incredibly, in 1890, decades after the myth claims the village was abandoned and completely cursed, historical records show 37 people were still living there. So no, it wasn't an overnight vanishing. It was a slow, agonizing migration spanning decades.
Section 4. The Real Ghosts. Unmasking the Paranormal.
So that begs the question, if it was just drought and taxes, why do people genuinely experience terrifying things in these ruins today? Well, the answer lies deeply rooted in human psychology, starting with confirmation bias. Basically, it's our brain's powerful tendency to process information in a way that perfectly matches what we already believe. When people visit Kuldhara, they are told over and over that it's India's most haunted village. They go in expecting to find spirits. So what happens? Their brains eagerly invent the proof, turning a random shadow into a ghost or the rustling of a bush into a spectral footstep.
And this pairs perfectly with pareidolia. That's the human brain's tendency to incorrectly perceive meaningful patterns in completely random stimuli. This brilliantly explains why visitors swear they hear human screams when, in reality, it's actually just the harsh desert wind howling through uniquely shaped empty stone walls. It completely explains why they see spectral faces and moving shadows in the uneven, crumbling ruins of the village architecture. We are literally wired to find patterns, even when there are absolutely none.
But wait, what about the paranormal investigators' hard evidence we talked about earlier? Well, it turns out there are highly rational explanations for those claims, too. Those motion sensors triggering in silence, easily caused by a strong, sudden gust of desert wind, or, simply a faulty, glitching device. And the most terrifying detail of all, the child's handprints appearing on the car? Okay, get this. There is a perfectly normal inhabited village just 4 kilometers away. Local children frequently play around the Kuldhara ruins, and local herders graze their animals right there. It just goes to show how mundane reality is so often mistaken for the supernatural.
But this raises a really fascinating question. If the haunting is just a mix of wind, psychology, and nearby kids, who originally spread these incredibly elaborate, specific ghost stories in the first place? Because the legend of Kuldhara didn't just invent itself out of nowhere. It was intentionally planted.
The answer? Treasure hunters. Yep, this is a classic Scooby-Doo villain twist. Remember, the Paliwal Brahmins were incredibly wealthy bankers, and rumors always swirled that they left substantial amounts of hidden gold buried in the floors and walls of their abandoned homes. So thieves intentionally invented and aggressively spread these terrifying ghost stories and curses. Why? To keep the terrified locals far, far away. It gave the thieves completely uninterrupted, safe access to loot the village's hidden wealth under the cover of darkness.
And history proves this isn't just a fun theory. For decades, the village was quietly and efficiently looted by local thieves, leveraging those exact ghost stories. But the definitive proof came in 1998, when a local watchman caught 2 foreign treasure hunters sneaking around Kuldhara at night with metal detectors. They were literally illegally digging up ancient gold and silver coins. It was only after these thieves were arrested by the police that the government finally woke up, built a protective boundary wall, and assigned a permanent watchman. This 1998 event proved once and for all that Kuldhara held real gold, not real ghosts.
And that brings us to a crucial point to leave you with today. Shouldn't we salute the incredible ingenuity of this civilization rather than searching the sand for phantoms? The true story of Kuldhara isn't some cheap horror movie about a cursed town. It's a breathtaking testament to human resilience. It was a brilliant community of engineers and bankers who turned a deadly, unforgiving desert into an oasis of immense wealth, only to have it slowly ripped away by environmental disaster and human greed. The next time you think of Kuldhara, don't remember the fabricated curse. Remember the desert miracle. Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the stories you hear.